So today we're going to talk about foreshortening. Foreshortening is when you have an object, like this pen, that instead of viewing it from the side, it's coming towards you. So that if you're viewing it from the side, you have this long distance from here to here, but if it's coming towards you, then that distance from the front to the back is very short. So this is something that you see a lot, like if a figure is seated and its knees are coming towards you, the model's knees are coming towards you, it's easy to draw those legs as being very short, and you end up with a person that looks like they have these tiny short legs, when in reality they're coming towards you, they're not going straight down and being short. So this can be a very scary topic to address, so I'm going to look a little bit about how we can manage it. So I feel like this is a good example where I have this model and the leg is going straight back, but this front part, so this distance from here to here, if I were to measure it, is very short. It's shorter than the distance of even this hand. So in our heads, we think of this leg as being long, because it is long. So we will want to draw it coming out into this space. Our heads will make us feel like it should come way over here. So how do we address that when we're drawing? So the first thing to think about is what we're always saying is to draw what you see, the shapes that you see, and not draw what you know should be there, like what you think should be there. So this top part of the leg, I think of it going from here to here. So this is not foreshortened, it's coming straight over. But if I measure that distance of that leg compared with this other leg, from the hip to the knee on this leg is longer than that whole other leg. Do you see that? So that is what I need to take into account. So the first thing I would do with this area right here, I am going to ignore this whole leg entirely. I'm just looking at this shape here. If I can get that shape, and I'm going to kind of zoom in on that area. Make sure I have that angle right. Something like that. And then from the end of this foot, it's coming up like that. So like we have said before, we are going to start with our simplest shapes and then go from there. So I'm getting this kind of shape on the inside. This is that bottom leg. And then this comes way up in here. And then out. And this leg then comes out right there. All right. So because I looked at this shape first, I got this whole shape. Then I looked at where this line comes right there, which I kind of put in here. Then I'm just kind of reshaping that line to figure out the shape of this leg. So this is going to give me a somewhat accurate shape of this area of the two legs. And from there I can, one of the things that I want to do is when you have something going back, I want to make sure it looks like this is going back. I want to kind of identify those areas that are in front of the other. So I can see that this area, the gluteus maximus, kind of comes in, and then there's an area on the leg that comes in that way, and then it goes down like that. That if I can kind of figure out where this is coming in front of that I can get this, like, in reality I have like this hip shape here, and then the leg coming there, and then the leg coming here, and then this part of that calf muscle there that I can kind of, it's almost like a topographical map going back, and then the foot back here. I'm going to get that toe, and then, yeah. And I have the same thing here, that I have kind of this calf muscle there, and then the Achilles tendon coming down. Then from there I have this top part of the foot, the ball of the foot, and then that back part of the foot going back. So I can kind of break this into different planes. And I even have here the rib cage coming in above that. So I end up with this, to make it more like, I'm gonna draw this a lot more clear than it should be. I'd have the rib cage, this part of the hip here, and then the thigh starting to come down, where this thigh muscle executes into the kneecap there, the calf muscle, and then the shin coming down. So I have these layers going down to get this leg. And this maybe should come out a little more, kind of fades into shadow. So I'm going to get this edge of the arm here. And I'm not going to worry about that half of the body right now because I really want to focus on this foreshortening. So I'm going to go ahead and draw these lines in a little bit more solid so we can see this, what shapes I ended up with. Okay, bud. We'll go up there in a second. Sorry, I have my son. Alright, so here I have this leg going back and this leg coming to the side. I have a pretty good idea of what's happening there. And as you can see, if I measure this part of the leg, that one part of the leg is so much longer than this leg going back, because this leg is foreshortened. It looks shorter, but I'm getting that idea that it's going back, especially once I start to add value to it. I'll get the idea that this leg is going back, and that the other leg is coming straight to the side. Okay, so I'm going to do one more. I have here a figure in a very unusual pose, and it always feels strange to draw a person that's in a strange pose because the pose is strange. So there's quite a bit that's foreshortened in this. The area across the shoulders is foreshortened. It's not, because it's not facing straight at me, and this leg especially is foreshortened. So when I think about how to approach this, I'm going to think about the full figure on this one. First, I'm looking at this line here and this bigger curve here. So if I look at this angle, I can get a line coming straight down. And then this larger curve going here gives me a pretty good idea of what this figure is doing. I'm going to go ahead and get kind of another So this one is a little bit more complicated in that it's just a really bizarre pose for the figure. So I'm going to start. I'm trying not to think of this as a figure at all. I'm looking at individual parts and trying to get these. I'm mostly cutting away the outside shapes that I see. If I have that arm coming, it comes past here, then I can look at this square that's in here. When you draw the shapes that aren't an object, you don't have an idea of what they should look like, and it can help you out. And then I have another shape here. All right, so the main foreshortened area I see is in this leg right there. So I'm going to go ahead and figure out where it's going to start from and where it's going to end. I'm getting these. And this looks short. It should look short, so this isn't very long. So for me to get this to look like it's going back, again, I'm going to start to figure out what's in front. This knee is in the front, and then I have this muscle that comes in here, and then the hip coming off of that. So I kind of get these. I also have a muscle coming in there. So I'm kind of giving myself those like layers. This is in front of that, which is in front of that. And I'll have the same thing coming back here. I have this calf muscle comes in here, right there. And then the shin coming down from that, and then the foot that goes this way. I'm going to draw right through that fabric. And that's my foot. So I'm going to go ahead and separate that off a little bit more. Now this leg coming up here is not nearly as foreshortened, so it's going to be a lot more of what we're used to drawing, which doesn't necessarily help us, to be honest. Because when it's a shape we feel like we know, sometimes we get lazy and forget to look, to really look. And it looks like this points straight in at the head, this top of the rib cage there. So again, I have this shoulder that comes back behind the breast, and the breast is behind the rib cage. So I drew the rib cage in. I'm starting to get the breast there, and then the shoulder just barely comes up behind that, so that tells me the breast needs to come up more. I see a little bit of the shoulder coming, and then that goes to the neck. This needs to come in a little bit, which means this needs to come in. There we go. All right, so what I really want us to focus on this week is finding some figures, some images of figures with foreshortened areas like this leg. And I want you to draw the whole figure, but I really want you to pay attention to these areas where here I have this leg that has, and try to figure out what is in front and how can I show that this has some layers to it, that it isn't just an outline of a leg going back, trying to think about the muscles that are coming in front and what the shape of those objects underneath are, which is part of why a decent understanding of human anatomy is important, to be able to figure out and to be able to understand what these muscles, what's layered in front of the other objects which are behind. Yeah. All right, so then I have this leg here, and you'll find that these layers that you give yourself of this is in front, this goes behind that, this goes behind that, will generally give you a pretty good idea of where the value needs to go when you start adding value to this drawing. So it tends to follow along those layers that you have. Then of course having the much darker value behind here.
Ball got everywhere.
Alright, so that's what I want us to focus on this week, is drawing some figures where we have arms, legs, or different objects, parts of the body going back away from us. And starting to get comfortable with that idea of a leg, the distance that a leg travels being shorter when it is at an angle.